Hello, hello. I'm super excited to be here. Would have been even more excited if I won my last match against Julian, but
Yeah, and so I'm Jonathan here with Bob, and yeah, so we had some good matches to start the day. Would we be able to bring up the bracket? Great. So in the first match, we had Julian against Phil. So Rug Delver against this Needle Stompy, huge pithing needle deck. Julian was able to win that one. And then afterwards, we had Bob against Autumn. Bob, would you be able to tell me about that match?
I was able to luck into a win. It was exciting.
Nice. At least you're honest, and that's what we like. But then you also played against Julian the round after that, and how did that one go?
He was able to luck into a win, so how unlucky.
Jeez, I mean, commentating this is going to be great with how much luck has played a part of these matches. Uh, great. So then that brings us to match 4, which is going to be Phil against Autumn, and so we have one deck that we're kind of familiar with, and one deck we're not that familiar with. So yeah, let's see the rug list first. Great. So a staple of the format. Would you be able to give me a rundown of what makes this different than other rug decks?
So I'm looking at it now. It looks like Autumn chose to play True Name, whereas Julian had Hooting Mandrills. Other than that, their two lists are really, really similar. You'll see Autumn has their crop rotation package, which doesn't matter too much in this matchup. Autumn does have 2 Ancient Grudges, though, which will be really good. I think Julian only had 1. So yeah, this is the standard quote unquote no bad cards rug delver that has been tearing up the format for the past couple of months or so.
Yeah, and it's cool that we see some newer cards in Hex Drink or Brazen Bar, where like there's a few spot and Oko in the board. So it seems like there's still a few things that are being tried out every now and then, but the core is always going to be the same. So it's good to see something familiar. So let's see something not as familiar with the second deck. And yeah, there's a lot going on here. Would you be able to break it down for me? Like what
I don't
cards do you
know if
think
anybody
are
other than the man Phil can break it down, but he called it Needle Stompy. He also called it Open Decklist Stompy. The idea being like if you know exactly what fetch lands are in your opponent's deck, Pithing Needle gets a lot better. Unfortunately for Phil, against both Autumn and Julian, they split their fetch lands fairly evenly. They could have played at Wooded Foothills, but they chose not to. But other than that, it's going to be pretty hard to needle the correct fetch land. Obviously, if you have a turn 1 Spyglass, it's a little better because you get to see what's going on in their hand. But I think this deck is kind of built to beat depths, and we saw in the match against Rug Delver. I think Rug Delver is like fairly decent against the Chalice decks just because it plays Tarmogoyf, Wasteland, Wrenn and 6. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so another factor is like the density of cards that matter relative to like how you're able to play around the counter spells. So if you keep a hand with 1 payoff, you're losing to most of the hands that have 1 Force of Will. And then there's like how Daze and Wasteland Spell Pierce are going to line up against the other threats in the deck. So we saw in an earlier match that being Wastelanded off, like the potential for reaching 3 mana to play Master of Ethereum and getting to the bigger payoffs enables Daze to do more. So first it really matters who's on the play and draw, but then after that it's how the threats are kind of lining up with the answers.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I also noticed that most of the chalices are in the sideboard. I'm actually surprised because Phil didn't bring in the chalices against Julian. We'll see if he does it differently in this match. So let's get started.
Yeah, it looks like Autumn's on the play here. But both hands look interesting. So the Autumn's hand on the play is great. You got the turn 1 Delver, you got Cantrip, Force of Will. Can't really ask for much better.
Looks like
and the Wasteland's
Phil
good.
mulligan, who's probably looking for maybe a Sol land. Unfortunately, the second hand's also a mulligan, I think, because it only has 1 land. So it looks like Phil has to keep this 5, but it might be the best hand he's seen so far.
Yeah, you definitely want to be really aggressive with how you're mulliganing with Phil's deck. There's a lot of hands that might look like they're fine for how a game would develop by like turn 3 or 4, but it's really 1 or 2 that you're trying to abuse the fast mana and getting certain pieces down.
Autumn's hand is somewhat awkward in that it does have everything, but the only land is a waterlogged grove. So in this matchup, it doesn't matter super much in terms of life totals, but it could matter for cards like Days. Sorry if you hear my dog Tully in the background. He wants to be involved.
That's okay. We love dogs here, and the days thing coming up. But uh, so on turn 2, I expect to see a ponder instead of the Tarmogoyf, since Tarmogoyf's size won't exactly be that good, and allows you to fish for the island to enable your days.
Agreed. Also, worst case scenario, the Days can also pitch to the Force, so it's still live. That's the nice thing about these blue decks is most of the blue cards, always pitch to Force of Will, so they're adding mana. Interesting.
Yeah,
So
Autumn, however, taking the other line. So this one plays better if you know that you plan on Force of Willing this turn. It does change the clock. So being very aware of what Phil's deck is attempting to do.
yeah,
So for Phil, being very aware of Wasteland, playing the island on turn 1, and able to play either Ancient Tomb or City of Traders on turn 2 to get 3 mana total in this turn. But the problem is the only payoff is a lowly 1/1 Master of Ethereum, which isn't exactly what his deck's looking for, but when you're down to 5 cards, beggars can't be choosers.
agreed.
So from Autumn's point of view, what are you thinking about here?
So Master of Ethereum is still a scary card. There are a number of zeros in Phil's deck, and if it outgrows the Tarmogoyf, it can be a powerful threat. That being said, it's kind of hard to see a Force of Will here when you're gonna just ponder and wasteland, and your Goyf's gonna be bigger this turn. And if you find a bolt, you might be able to bolt the Master.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's really interesting about this play is this is the play Phil would make if his hand just had 4/0 drops as well. So it's kind of hard from Autumn's point of view to read too much into the situation that was Master of Ethereum that chose to be led on. So I actually really do like the Force of Will because it allows you to ponder and then look for an island for your days, and then you have this wasteland for the Ancient Tomb, so you're already setting the opponent far enough back, and it has your Tarmogoyf be a size such that you can race over the course of 3 turns. So being very aware of just how to pace the matchup.
That's fair. Yeah, and now that they found an island, I think this play definitely worked out in their favor. Especially with Phil being, wastelanded down to 1 land. You have a ton of pressure. You have 2 counter spells. It's really hard to see Phil coming back from this position.
And I'm sure drawing a land's not what he wants there. And yeah, after the rough
game's already over.
Yeah, all that pretty much makes sense. All right, so for the sideboard, let's start with Phil. So what do you like in the sideboard here?
So I like the chalices. I noticed he didn't bring them in last match, so it looks like he's choosing not to again. What do you think about that?
So I could see it being possibly a play draw contention. So if he's still high on Pithing Needle, then you got some contention with your later on Pithing Needles when you chalice on 1. But intuitively to me, just Chalice of the Void against Delver feels like something you typically want to do. So it could be possible he's doing like a level 2 or level 3 strategy, like just one that I haven't thought about enough. And him being the one that submitted this and knowing that some other people in his group fancy Rug Delver, and there happens to be 2 this week, like I'm sure he already thought about how he wants to attack the matchup. So if he knows that other people are aware that he would normally bring in Chalice, maybe other people are shaving on cards like Lightning Bolt or maybe like certain 1 drops. So.
Yeah, that's fair. There's also Ancient Grudge from Autumn's side, so Chalice is I guess a lot of your deck kind of walks into Ancient Grudge, with Chalice especially, because often it costs 2 mana or more. So, and then from Autumn's side, they're bringing in Pyroblast, Grudge, and taking out some 1-drops like Lightning Bolt, Hex Drinker, Ren 6. So that all makes sense to me.
Which is probably a nod to the turn 1 Chalice that they're expecting. So maybe it's good on Phil that like he's getting that extra edge from just having the Chalice in his list.
Yeah, it looks like Phil's plan is to bring in defense grids and just be like, if my big spells, like my 4-drops and 3-drops resolve, they should overpower you. So that's what Phil's strategy is.
Yeah, I usually like to think of defense grid as like a preemptive spell sky. Like if you have a counter, you're gonna do it on this. So like it allows you to curve your quote spell sky into your payoff afterwards.
Right. Cool.
Padim
Looks
is
like they're gonna
also
get
a pretty
started.
cool card. Yeah.
So that's the one where, like, if you control more artifacts, you draw a card.
Yeah, and your artifacts have hexproof.
Gotcha.
All right, so opening hands. So I don't know how many chalices you said were boarded in.
He didn't board any
there's
in, but he
one
played
thing.
one main, so he's gonna lead on it.
Nice. Well, if I knew I would start with Chalice of the Void in my hand, I would also only play one. So good on him.
It's true.
But
The second one's not quite as good, although we do see Autumn's ready with both Force of Will and Ancient Grudge.
yeah, so Autumn's hand is a lot more reactive, but you're actually pretty okay with that in the matchup because these Stompy style decks will be dedicating a lot of resources. Here we could see City of Traders. So if you can, once again, how I said during the pregame, where you like want to line up your answers with threats, like
Mhm.
parity favors you because you have the power of blue. You have brainstorm, ponder. You can like look for things, while the Stompy style decks just need to rely on their innate power. So a hand of just 3 forces Ancient Grudge blue card is like, sure, you would prefer that there was a Delver in it, but it's kind of my favorite hand.
Mhm. I believe they're going for, well, looks like Master of Ethereum, a lowly 1/1. I think I probably would have played the Seed of the Synod just to play around Ren and 6.
So one knock against that.
Oh,
So
sorry, it's a 2/2. It's a 2/2. Never mind.
right, and also you open up your Seat of the Sun again, Ancient Grudge. So if they just want to sidestep Chalice of the Void, then like you're allowing them to have more wastelands in their deck. So when you play the island, it can make your turn 2 better, or your 2 lands in play better.
Yeah.
But it looks like the Rug Delver deck is going to be able to play the control role this game, which is one of my favorite reasons for playing Delver.
Yeah, when it's able to kind of pivot into that mid-range strategy, you've seen like kind of Grixis Delver do it, but Rug Delver does it even more so than the old Deathrite Grixis Delver lists do, just because of Ren and 6 generating so much card advantage.
Mm-hmm. So running out the Walking Ballista, not really any other plays, but once again, from Autumn's point of view, they just need to think about, what can be in Phil's hand that produced this current board state, and like why would he lead on Walking Ballista here? So Ancient Grudge taking out the primary threat here makes a lot of sense to me.
Yep, and then the flashback's going to take out the Chalice, and then Autumn's going to get to Ponder, I think.
And Ren and 6 being able to produce a land drop every turn could be pretty relevant.
Yep, now they have the option of pinging the Walking Ballista, which I actually think it's okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. It's an answer because it doesn't die. It goes down to 1 loyalty, which is fine.
Yeah, just operation keep everything off the board. I have these Force of Wills. So the turn that Phil does nothing and passes is the turn I feel like Autumn has virtually won the game. And by virtually, I mean like 95% to win.
Interesting. Autumn actually ticked up there rather than ticking down.
Well, know that it's very unlikely that the Walking Ballista is going to go up to being a 2/2.
Well, it could just Ancient Tomb and then attack and then kill it. Well, it would be a trade, I guess.
But like, if your opponent had Ancient Tomb, would they have played City of Traders on turn 1? Like, I think you could do some deduction that makes it less likely that they could produce 4 mana on this turn.
Well, there's also Mox Opal, but I see your point.
That's true.
That's interesting.
So if it's Mox Opal, you can also, I guess there's already Seed in play. I was trying to see if you could like flashback Ancient Grudge in that scenario, but it's still 3 artifacts, so that doesn't work.
Yeah. Looks like they kind of held the option to not hit the Grudge on the Chalice, but I think they're probably going to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, turn on this Ponder and just finding a threat. So that's another thing. The Walking Bliss is smaller than most of the threats that Autumn would produce. So like Tarmogoyf and True Name Nemesis would both blank this Walking Ballista.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good against like Hex Drinker, but again, you can run in 6, take care of it before that becomes relevant.
Mm-hmm. And then if you draw Brazen Borrower and Phil lets the Walking Ballista to come back into the hand, you could choose the Force of Will on the way down, kind of taking up 2 turns for that amount of effort. So a punter here probably looking for a threat since all the reactive elements are there. And Oko's a pretty good one from the board.
Yeah, so I've actually not seen this card in play yet in Legacy. So maybe I've seen it. I guess I saw. I mean, Autumn briefly played it against me
yeah,
when
produced
they
a
already had the
food, I think.
game. Yeah, when the game was already wrapped up, basically. Uh, but what are your thoughts on this card? It's kind of just like a pseudo threat slash answer, right? Yeah. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Sorry.
I think to some extent it might just be a better true name nemesis.
Wow,
As weird as that sounds.
that's those are some big words because it still dies to removal. Not that much removal because it has a high loyalty, but it's still
Yep.
vulnerable to Red Blast, Abrupt Decay, and I mean, I guess True Name's vulnerable to Plague Engineer.
Yeah, plague engineer, any kind of edict effect. It feels like the format could choose how to adapt, but now you get to play two types of true name nemesis. So I really like that.
Fair.
So like I used to be a fan of like 4 true name nemesis. Now I feel like I would just play 2 true name 2 Oko.
Uh-huh.
So Trinket Mage, so that unlocks a bunch of things that needs me to reference Cardboard.Live to see what he can get. So he can get the 3rd Walking Ballista, but he already has a Ballista in hand, so he might just Ballista for 2 instead if that were the plan.
Mm-hmm.
He can also play a Trinket Mage, which is kind of like the 2/2 Ballista, and then he can get like, I don't know, like Mox Opal, and then that can make a 3/3 Ballista the next turn. Or he can choose to look for Basilisk Collar over like the next like turn cycle. And that is a combo with Walking Ballista. So a couple different things that Trinket Mage could enable, but instead choosing to go this Walking Ballista plus Needle. Needle kind of being a huge prize here. If the Needle's allowed to land, then he would be able to name Oko.
Mm-hmm. All right, looks like Phil's gonna get one of the Planeswalkers off the board, and next turn his plan could be like Trinket Mage Needle again. That being said, we know Autumn has Force, so Autumn's probably gonna just sit there happily, make some creatures, and hold up Force of Will.
And being able to hardcast Force of Will makes this game very difficult. So Autumn no longer has to commit any more mana for like it just depends on how many threats that Phil's able to produce. But like this is an advantage to playing with counter spells in your deck. When you have an advantage, you just hold up counter magic and you pretty much like get to time walk them every time that you get to counter a spell. So here,
Yeah.
given the optionality of countering this Trinket Mage, but looking at the list, so that was 1 Needle, but there's a lot more where that came from. So Autumn being aware of that, Phil has no cards in hand. You're able to hardcast this Force Will. It seems like a good time to cash it in for that time walk effect.
Yep. So Autumn's gonna slowly make a food army while holding up the last Force of Will and just kind of keep drawing cards every turn. So I think
Yeah,
they're in.
maybe Oko is just better than True Name Nemesis. The clock is even faster.
Yeah, and you see another counterspell there. And like even if Oko were able to or even if Phil, played something like a Master of Ethereum, Oko could even steal it. So it's quite powerful.
Yeah, and something really funny you get to do here is you can also just plus the Oko on the defense grid, and then you still had all the counter spells in your hand. So your food can trade with the defense grid. You might just be fine with that, and you still just have this Force of Will.
Well, how would you get it to trade though? You would have to they
Well,
would
you
have to
plus
block.
you sure, but if you plus Oko on the defense grid, you like really don't care. Like your Oko has 1 billion loyalty, and then now they don't have a defense grid, so you don't have to spend the Force of Will on it.
True. The Ponder
So
is looking at Brainstorm, Sylvan Library, and Delver. Looks like they chose to draw the Delver, just kind of add more pressure, and it should be over soon. And they
yeah, I
still get
like
to
that.
hold up Force of Will.
Yep. So having 3 mana up with a Force of Will blue card means that you can pay for the defense grid and still Force of Will. So
Yeah.
pretty good execution there.
Yep. And then they're locked to win because the Delver flips off of the Brainstorm.
Yep. So
All
did
right.
this matchup play out how you would expect it would?
I think so. I think Phil was kind of gunning for me, but he got didn't get paired against me. So that's kind of the one downside that there can be to over metagaming.
Yeah, I do like his decision of trying to prey on the fact that there's open deck lists, though, with having needle effects and Sorcerer's Spyglass trying to pick things off when you already know what the matchup is.
Looks like I get to play against Rug Delver again, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, well, I'm just here to watch and commentate good Magic, so, but I do wish you the best of luck when you end up doing that. But before that, we have a raffle.
Ooh, exciting!
Yeah, who doesn't like free stuff?
All right, so you heard the screen, or rather, you read the screen. Type card hoarder in chat to enter into the raffle. You can win 6 dragon dice. These look pretty sweet.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind winning myself. Let me go type it too. That way I can get in this raffle.
All right, let's see. Are you? I'm actually not. I don't have Twitch open, so you can call off the winner.
How do I do that? Do I just say like?
Well.
Oh, you mean saying the winner, like when it's decided? I got it.
Yeah, when it's decided. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So make sure you get that in. Awesome Dice, sponsor of the stream, Card Hoarder. We really appreciate the sponsorship and really helping make this possible. And you'll also be able to when you win these dice, you can show them off and also support Card Hoarder, who supports us that way. But we would also like to thank our sponsors, Wizards of the Coast. Might have heard of them. They produced a game or two. And our sponsor, Scott Monroe. So yeah, thanks to those 3 parties for making this all possible. And looks like there's about 10 seconds left in the raffle. And all right, come on, Watch Wolf 92 one time. That's a weird way of spelling Watch Wolf 92. All right, Abaddon 1222 is the winner. It's great. So yeah, just reach out to It's Julian in a private message, and he should be able to get that information to you. So awesome. So just one more match to go. It's gonna be you versus Autumn for the last winner spot. So best of luck to you, and I just hope to be able to commentate good Magic.
Thank you. I'll do my best to provide that.
Awesome. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Cool. See ya.